Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to another little utility patch on the Empress Effects Zoia patchable modular synthesizer in a little black box. This patch started with an idea I had about how to make presets on the Zoia, and by presets I don't mean patches. By presets I mean that within one patch you have a different discrete set of parameters that you want to control easily and switch between while you're performing. And there are two sort of major ways I wanted to be able to do this, and that is first of all with radio buttons. So I've got 4 radio buttons over here to switch between 4 different presets. And also I wanted to be able to rotate through the presets with the Stomp switch. So both the radio buttons and the Stomp switch are now moving through the 4 presets that are made. And if you select something with the radio button here, the Stomp switch just takes the next preset. It doesn't, so they're both connected together. And of course, whatever you want the preset to do, it could be absolutely anything. It is triggered, you can make it get triggered by exactly the same output, same CV output that creates the number 3 here, and that creates the light on this radio button. And of course, it also has to be exclusive. That means only one preset is active at a time. Now, radio buttons, I have done a video on how to make radio buttons before, and this is going to be quite similar in many ways to how the radio buttons work on their own. I'll just put a little link to the radio buttons video up here in the corner in case you want to see that separately. And I will show you how I do this. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to have selection like this with radio buttons is sometimes you need a patch to perform just on your desk, and at other times you might want to do patches where you're standing in front of a synthesizer, or you are got a guitar or something else and you want to be able to use the Stomp switch. And a big visual feedback with both color and number as well was part of my brief when I was thinking how to do this. So I've done different colors for the different presets, so even if your vision is a bit blurry, if you forgot to wear your glasses, you might still be able to see which preset is active. Right, so the workings of this patch, the major workings of it all fit on a single page, which is what I like to do if I can. It makes it easier to demonstrate, and it makes it easier to wrap your head around, because once you start swapping between pages, it's easier to lose track in a tutorial, I think. And now, of course, all these switches here, the radio buttons and the Stomp switch, they're all momentary switches. They give out a signal of 1 only when they're pushed. And I've got the Stomp switch input here. That's the pad that connects the Stomp switch to everything else. These 4 sample and hold modules are the main part, that's the heart of this patch. These are the ones that are triggered, and when they output a value of 1, that is when each of the patches are selected. Okay. The way a sample and hold works is it takes an input, which can be a variable value, it can be a momentary value that you send just as you trigger it, but it has a single input, and it doesn't do anything with the input most of the time unless it gets a trigger. So it has a separate trigger input. I'll just remove that there. So value input, trigger input. When the trigger gets a signal, it will copy the value from the input to the output, and it will stay there until it gets a new trigger input. So sample and hold. That's why it's called sample and hold. In this case, I'm using it for selection and actually for making momentary buttons latching, but to make them exclusively latching, which means only one setting can be active at a time, which is part of the key. Now, of course, you could make something similar with just latching buttons, but then you would have to unselect and then select a new one. Otherwise, your effects would stack, your outputs would stack. So So 4 sample and hold modules, so 1 for each preset you want. And they are triggered, as you can see, they're all triggered by this module up here, which has 3 pads. And this is a delay. And the reason I had to put a delay is that the trigger signal for the sample and hold modules seem to arrive at slightly the wrong time, so that the output value just remains 0. So in order for the input value to be high, to be 1 at the right time, I had to put in a little delay. So this the output from the Stomp switch goes to a delay module that has a small delay of 1.33 milliseconds, and that output goes to the trigger of the sample and hold modules. So you press the Stomp switch and you can see things happening here. You see there's another set of modules here that do stuff while I press it. And I'll go through that because we want only one of these sample and hold modules to have an output value at the same time, which means that the trigger signal now has to be sent to all of these. And also the inputs since I'm scrolling through these values, let's see, they all need to have input values as well, that to make sure that only one of these has an active input value of 1 at the same time, because they all get a trigger, but only the input with the value of 1 passes through. All the other ones would have an input value of 0 and get a 0 at the output. And this is crucial, of course, for making this work. And how we do this is with a logic gate. We love a logic gate. Hang on. Yes. So I also made a video about logic gates. So I'm going to put a link to that up here, binary logic gates. But of course, you don't need to know how that works in order to understand this, because in this case, I'm using AND gates. And it is quite easy to wrap your head around because it's basically just multiplication. So you see these 4 modules here. There's one for each of the sample and hold modules is a multiplier module. So, and you see one of these, it's got 2 inputs and it multiplies them together and it creates an output. So the middle input here, you see, is connected to the sample and hold that's just above it. Because the thing is, we want a sample and hold only to trigger to get a value output of 1 if, when you use the Stomp switch, if the one that is active is the one before it. So when this one is active, it sends a 1 also to this multiplier, which is linked to this sample and hold below it. So sample and hold number 3 is linked to sample and hold number 4 in that sense. So the output of the multiplier goes to the input of the next sample and hold. So you see this one gets a value of 1, and then it multiplies that by this value, which takes its trigger from this. So you see all the 4 multiplier modules, one of the values it gets is a 1 every time the Stomp switch is triggered, and then it gets a 1 from the previous sample and hold. So for instance, we are on module number 3 here, and let's see, I'll just unselect that now. Okay, so and that means that the module number 3 here, preset number 3, sends a CV value of 1 to this multiplier. At the moment, this multiplication pad here has a value of 0. So the output of this is at the moment 0. And we can see that here, it has a value of 0. But the minute we push this button here, the input from this button will send a value of 1 to this pad. There is a value of 1 on that pad, and 1 times 1 multiplication becomes 1. So these multipliers, they only give a value of 1 if both of their inputs are 1. If one of them is 0, the value out will be 0. So this one can only be 1 if and only if the previous sample and hold has a value of 1. And the same for all of them. They're connected to the previous in the line. And this is crucial to how this works. So if I push this button now, it will move on. Let's see, we can't actually see the value there, but it moved on to the next. Now it's got an output of 1. And this one again is connected to the next multiplier in line. So if you keep doing this, you can see the pairs, the output from the sample and hold multiplier, sample and hold multiplier, etc. And that is the main way that that works. Now, and that really explains how to use a stomp switch to select between the presets. That is all the workings of doing that. Now, in addition, we have the radio buttons. They, of course, select as well. So if you push one of these, I'll just go to the next page, you see they are connected to let's see, it would be easier now to see if, let's push this one there. Let's see. Well, actually, I'll just show you now. So this one is connected to, it doesn't actually show for some reason there, connected to all this sample and hold triggers. And then it is connected to its own, so this one is preset 4, so it connects to all the triggers of all the sample and hold modules, and then it also sends its value to the 4th sample and hold, which is where it sends its value. So it connects to all of these triggers, which for some reason doesn't show now. Let's see, does that show if I, oh yes, I can scroll through them now. So it connects to this one, this one, this one, this one, and to the input value of this one. So that means that every time you push one of the radio buttons, all the sample and hold modules trigger, but the only one that gets an input value is the one that belongs to that preset, so in this case number 4. The other ones have a 0, and so that is what is passed through and becomes the new output, regardless of what it was before, which is how it only selects one at a time. So that's a little bit easier to do. You don't have to use the delay module on the radio buttons for some reason. It only needs to be done on the stomp switch. I suppose it is because I have to do the calculation with the AND gate, and that delays the value going through. So I hope that is clear. That is basically how it works now. And in addition, I have these here. What am I doing with these now? These are connected to, yes. Now, of course, in order to create the, I've almost forgotten about that now, to create the different colors on the display, I'll just show you that now. So different colors. The output from these sample and holds are sent to a value module over here. So of course the output is 1. That's the best starting point for any control of any other module on the Zoia, because you can make it less than 1 by attenuating the connection strength. Each of these value modules goes to the and these are the ones connected to the number pad. So they are connected to each of these, and of course these are UI buttons, user interface buttons, and they're not pixels. You could use pixels, which would be easier. If you use pixels, you can just connect the sample and hold outputs to the pixels, and they would be on when the output is 1. But I wanted to use different colors, and a UI button, a user interface button, it gets different colors depending on the CV value that it gets. So these value modules get an input of 1, and then they connect up to the different pixels. The reason I didn't need to use a value module for that either, but it's easier to have one module that is connected to all the things rather than trying to connect each one and then change the connection strength for each pixel. So that's a lot of work. So it's easier to do it like that. So let's see, I'll just show you again on the other pages. So this one now has a connection strength here of 57.54, and this one of 3.672, 47.86, and 31.98. So which correspond to the different colors. If you go into the module index, it says the different values that belong to different colors on the UI button description. So these ones, each ones are connected to the pixels that make up this is for the one there. You can see those light up a little bit brighter, and also to the radio button as well. So they both come from the same place. So there's one for channel for 1, one for 2, one for 3, and one for 4. Okay, so just to sort of demonstrate again how to do this. Just have a quick look at the sound production as well, because I was doing the just to sort of show how I do that. I've got 4 oscillators up here. So there's a sine, square, I think, triangle, and sawtooth, and they are connected to an audio in switch. So let's see. So each have their own channel on an audio in switch. Of course, an in switch takes several inputs and routes it to only one output. And then I have the channel selector here, which is selected by this value module over here. And that gets its input value from, as you can see, it uses the sample and hold outputs. So this is belongs to the 4 channels again, and I've just set the connection strength to correspond to the different channels. And the way a switch works is it takes the range from 0 to 1 and splits it evenly among the number of channels. So if you have 4 channels, your first channel is selected when the channel selector gets a CV value between sorry, that's the wrong one. Oh, there we are. Between 0 and 0.25. The second channel is selected if it is between 0.25 and 0.5, etc. And I like sort of putting these values really close to the top of the range because it's more visible as the light strength, which also shows a connection strength on the Zoia. And they don't need to be; they could be anywhere within that range. So it's really up to you how to do it. So that value module is then getting the input from those, and it selects the channel. And then let's see, where was I? So and then the audio out goes to a VCA, and the VCA is controlled by an ADSR, an attack, decay, release, attack, decay, sustain, release envelope that is triggered by this LFO here. So the gate input of the ADSR is on this LFO, but this LFO is also controlled by this LFO, which is, I believe, this is a random LFO. Is this a random LFO? Yes, that's a random LFO. And also, so the timing is a little bit random, and the connection strength is, let's see, connection strength is, so I'm not using the full random, I'm just using 26% random. And then, let's see, this one here is, so this, another random LFO here that's connected to a quantizer. And the quantizer is quantizing to A major at the moment. And sending its output to the oscillators. So that's how it works. A little bit convoluted there, but that's, yeah. And also the sound also goes via a, let's see, I'd have some effects here. I've also got a chorus and a reverb. So that is it, really. Relatively simple. The main workings, sample and hold, and AND gates, or just multiplication, just to make sure that the right sample and hold is selected. And that is pretty much it. And you create your own presets. You can do lots of stuff with this. You can take the outputs of the sample and hold. That is the value that is then passed on to everything else in your patch that you want to control with these preset settings. And you can adjust it with connection strength, of course, to get the whole range from 0 to 1. You can adjust it with other kinds of binary logic. You can do, you can invert it, you can do whatever you like with it, and you can control lots of parameters from one place. So that's it. So I hope you found this little tutorial useful. This is really useful for anyone who makes patches that they want to be able to use in performance, and you want to make it really clear and visible what you're doing, and you can set up your presets before you start. You don't have to, because it is a little bit fiddly to have only one knob, for instance, to control all the parameters. Sometimes you do want to control more parameters in one go, and this is one way to do it. Another way, of course, is to create master value modules. So if you have several things you want to connect with one knob at the same time, you can create a value module, and you can connect that to different things and have different connection strengths as well. So that's another way of doing that. But I think that's quite an elegant and simple solution, and also it's visually quite appealing, I think. And of course, you don't need the radio buttons. I just like having the option of selecting things in the whatever order I want, as well as having the scroll through with the Stomp switch. So I hope that is all clear, and if you have any questions whatsoever about this, please leave a comment in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this, if this is something you think you might find, if you find it inspirational, even if you find it inspirational for doing something else in your own patches, or if you actually implement this in your own patches, please let me know. I suppose I will put this one on patch storage because it's a little bit fiddly to set up, a little bit time consuming, especially if you don't really know what you're doing, but you really want to have the workings of this available to you. So I will put it there. I will put the link down in the description when I've got it. And yeah, I think all that remains for me to say is, well, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.